Good morning, everybody. I am Jennifer Prell, the president and founder of Elderwerks Educational Services. We are here today for a panel discussion on younger onset dementia. It is going to be an emotional morning, so please make sure you have Kleenexes available. And by the way, crying is acceptable. We are all humans here. I cry all the time. I'm a big baby. So if you have any questions, please go to the bottom of your screen, click the reactions button, and at the bottom it says raise hand, and we will call on you when we have a break in the thought process. Just so you're aware. So Elderwerks Educational Services is a not-for-profit 501c3 organization assisting older adults and seniors with senior living coordination, advocacy, and education. We are huge advocates for senior issues, and that's why we also get involved with folks that get early onset dementia and Alzheimer's and Huntington's and Parkinson's and all of the awful diseases. So if you have a friend or family member who is suffering, please have them reach out to Elderwerks for support. Lorenzo's house was founded by Diana Cose, and her husband was diagnosed with younger onset Alzheimer's. And she and her 11 and 14-year-old sons found their way as caregivers for their dad with this complicated condition. Diana recognized there was a care gap for her family and others, and she founded Lorenzo's house in 2021 with the tagline, "We bring light," representing their aim to shift the narrative from isolation and suffering to connection and joy. Elderwerks and Lorenzo's house have come together for the greater good to educate the public on younger onset dementia. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. If I can hold on a second. One sec. All right. We have Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, and she's going to do a little introduction. All right.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton. I use she, her pronouns, and it's an honor to welcome you to You Are Not Alone, a panel discussion on younger onset memory loss. I want to take a moment to thank the entire teams at Lorenzo's house and Elderwerks for their hard work in bringing us together today, and for the passion and heart you pour into supporting families and individuals with dementia every single day. I also want to thank all of you joining us, the partners, professionals, volunteers, the caregiver families, the individuals living with dementia who are here today. Your stories and experiences, your voices are powerful, and you deserve to be seen, heard, and supported, to know that you are not alone. In fact, I'll make this clear. Illinois stands with you. I stand with you, not only as your Lieutenant Governor, but also as a caregiver. You know, I had the honor and privilege of serving as the primary caregiver for my mom, Velma. My mom taught in the Chicago public schools and later taught adult education at Malcolm X College. For the last 13 years of her life, she lived with me and my family. And in the last 3 years of her life, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's-related dementia. I witnessed firsthand the challenges in finding resources, the stress that comes with being a caregiver, and the loneliness that can come with having to navigate my new role as caregiver while I managed being a mom to my daughters and having a career. Through my own experiences, I saw the struggles of countless other caregivers and families. And that's why, as Lieutenant Governor, I partnered with the Alzheimer's Association Illinois chapter to launch the Through Our Eyes campaign. This campaign took me to every corner of the state to listen to families living with or caring for a loved one with dementia. And what came from that was a historic milestone. Illinois became the first state in the nation to require healthcare providers serving adults 26 and older to be trained in spotting signs of Alzheimer's and dementia. And we'll keep working to ensure every individual and their families have the tools to live a good quality of life. It's inspiring to see so many, from today's panelists to the host and organizers, to all of you attending, be a part of this dialogue. Thank you for all you do. And I hope you make the most of this opportunity to connect and be in conversation during today's panel.
It was very nice of her to do our introduction today and be our special speaker. We have three panelists today. We have Quentin Lange, Diana Shulla Cose, and Jacquelyn Revere. We're going to start with Quentin this morning. Quentin's going to talk a little bit about his experiences, and then we'll move through to the other two. Quentin.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Quentin Lange. I grew up in the Northwest Chicago suburbs, specifically Des Plaines, and I went away to school a few years ago back to Purdue. And while I was at Purdue, my mother had passed away and my father was diagnosed with severe early onset Alzheimer's at age 52. During that time, when my mom passed away, that is when I stepped in as the power of attorney and guardian for my father. I was balancing finishing school as a student, but also as a primary caretaker, and then also trying to finish school at the same time and finding a full-time job. So that was definitely a difficult journey and something that I'd be more than happy to share and dive a lot deeper into during this discussion. But a lot of the things that I've learned from that have shaped me to the person I am today. And I'm more than happy to want to reflect and share a lot of those experiences with others. And I currently live in Lakeview, Chicago. That's where I currently reside.
Thank you, Quentin. Diana.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Diana. Jennifer, thank you for being such a great host, and honored to sit on a panel with Quentin and Jacquelyn, who you both inspire everyone. So thank you. I'm in awe of you, and we're sisters and brothers in this, so I'm so grateful. Our journey as a family with younger onset Alzheimer's began about a decade ago, now that I'm looking back. While my husband, Lorenzo, the love of my life, the father of our two sons, Justin and Lucas, was diagnosed in 2017, we began a journey that so many families experience. And yet still, when you talk about Alzheimer's or dementia, when you have experienced one case of Alzheimer's, you have experienced one case of Alzheimer's. Every family is different. Every experience is different, and our story is our story. But one of the things that I realized very quickly was that we were alone, we were isolated. We had no place to land and sort of belong as a family. And suddenly Alzheimer's became our identity. And while this was an important part of our identity, how did we walk this path and also try to manage a full life and try to create a family experience where we could find people who understood our experience too. So I felt that it was important to perhaps build a place that was unapologetically for families who were younger with Alzheimer's. And with the support of so many smart people, Lorenzo's House launched a little less than 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years ago in January. And we are a solution-based social impact organization that empowers younger families walking with Alzheimer's and other dementias. And we are now touching the lives of nearly 200 families across the country and globe. And I'm honored to be a part of this panel. And I'm so grateful to have this community, because you are a part of my healing journey, and we need each other. So thank you.
Thank you, Diana. I know this is difficult for you, so I appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, thank you.
Jacquelyn.
Hi, I just want to start out by saying thank you for having me here. I also stutter, and so you guys will see and or hear that. But my journey started in 2016. When I moved from New York home to LA to care for my mom who was taking care of her mom who had dementia, but my mom has started showing signs also. And so I instantly became the family caregiver for two people. That was a journey, but later on in 2020, I began sharing what it was like caring for my mom on social media, somewhat out of isolation. And then that social media page became fairly large. And we then became just a place for other caregivers to come so that they didn't feel so lonely. And then we became a problem solving page. And so we brought more joy to Alzheimer's than I had seen. And I just love that we were able to make the impact that we did. My mom recently passed, and now my goal is just to continue sharing the knowledge that I have, and just to continue letting other caregivers know that a community exists.
Thank you. I know it's difficult for every one of you to be here. I am amazed at all three of you, because it does take really a lot of courage and strength to be the go-to person for everything, especially when you're younger. You know, I'm 54. I'm still not ready. So to have to do this when you're younger, it's really difficult. We don't have set questions today, so this is going to be kind of a free flow. If anyone has any questions, please ask them. Otherwise, you're just going to hear my voice, and my voice is boring. So I prefer to hear from others. I did write a few things down. Quentin, you're ridiculous. Like, I don't know how you managed to get through school and do well and graduate, taking care of a loved one and look for a job all at the same time. Can you tell me where in your core you got that energy from? How did you do this?
I wish there was a simple answer to that question, which obviously there is not. But I would say I really just looked towards hope. I wanted to strive towards bettering my father's life, you know, knowing that what he was going through and knowing everything that he's done for me up until this point. And I really wanted to give back in every capacity that I could. And I knew that it was going to take support, whether from additional resources like Elderwerks and Lorenzo's house, as well as leveraging support groups and leveraging the support of my friends, and having someone to lean on while going through a lot of this stuff, I think was a very important part of getting through this journey. But taking it one step at a time, I think most importantly, and just focusing on persevering through what I can. And like I mentioned, it was one step at a time, where I first had to work through getting a caretaker, first going through, okay, when my dad had to transition from the house that then I sold into a memory care home, what to be looking for, which is what Elderwerks supported me a lot in, with providing me with a list of questions and what are the right things to think when going through that journey, whether it's battling with Medicare, Medicaid, the financial liability, the limitations of power of attorney and guardianship, as well as questions in terms of things that people just forget to ask. And I think the big thing is leveraging all the resources and help that is there. And without Lorenzo's house and Elderwerks, it would have been a lot harder for me to be able to accomplish this on my own. So I never like to take credit for the fact that I did it all myself. I really did feel like I had other resources there to help and support me. But I would say definitely the hardest part of the journey was when I was still in school and finishing up school at the same time of learning for the first hand how to be a caretaker. So I connected with the Alzheimer's Association at first, and they taught me a lot in terms of a few different resource groups and how to manage just some different conversations with your loved ones, since it was my first time noticing symptoms of my father where he was forgetting things, or his mood was changing, or he was getting angry at me, and how to respond appropriately so I wouldn't escalate the situation, since there's unfortunately there's no one to blame in these situations. And it's very easy to get upset and wrapped up, but you have to just look at everything with a positive light. And I know that that's something that it took a long time to get to that level or get to that point, but I know that with hope and just perseverance, I was able to get there. So I know that anyone else who is going through this, regardless of age, since age doesn't necessarily play a factor in it, like everyone at any age is going to be just as unprepared as I felt. And I think anyone can do it. If you really want to be there and be everything that you can for your loved one. I know, no one's going to just give up. You want to give it your all, and it takes help and resources to connect with to make that happen.
Thank you. We do have a question from David Altman. David, please unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
So a question for the group, maybe for the overall group, but certainly for this group. If you could describe your journey towards getting diagnosed. One sort of detail that jumped out at me was, I forget the name of the gentleman, Quentin, that's it, who said that his had severe Alzheimer's, which and the word severe, and the idea that presumably he had it for a while before Quentin figured that out. That's not a criticism, but it seems like everyone I know, like it's a long and winding path to get towards a diagnosis, and it could be years. And just your thoughts on that, because especially since there seems to be a likelihood that within the next year there'll be some drugs, but they'll really only be for early stage people. And so the need for a quick diagnosis is really going to pick up soon, in my opinion. And so I was just curious your guys' thoughts on that.
All right.
No, and I appreciate you for asking that, because that is probably the most important question to ask when it comes to catching and how to start. And fortunately for me at the time, I was working with my mother, who was still alive when he was diagnosed. But I know that process was not easy. He was showing symptoms for about a year and a half before he actually showed a diagnosis of having Alzheimer's. We had actually got him tested, and it came back negative, showed that there is nothing wrong with him. And it is a challenging thing. It runs in my family. His two sisters have had it and passed away. My grandma had it and passed away. He's got one sibling that does not have it at all, completely unaffected, but it does run in my family. We did know that it was very likely that he'd have it, and he was displaying signs at about 49. And that was when I was still in high school. Well, now we just assumed it could have been, since he was a restaurant manager, poor hours he worked, poor dieting, kind of just bad sleep. And we didn't know what else to go off of other than, it's just too young. How could he be diagnosed at this age? It's just young. All of his other siblings got it in their 60s. Like, what is that? What are the odds? And we got tested in Elk Grove Village, I believe. It might have been associated with like Alexian Brothers Hospital. And at first they came back negative. A big thing was trying to get him into a place that specialized to another level, which was Northwestern, the Mesolume Center, I believe, for neurological. And that was something we worked hard to get into, but we eventually did after a year. And he started to see one of the better facilities in the country. And with that diagnosis, they were able to detect that he had already had Alzheimer's. So it's hard to say when there was that gap in between. and how in between a year of getting tested, all of a sudden he was diagnosed with severe early onset, and the previous test the year before didn't show anything. I don't have the answers to that. I wish I did. I still ask those questions today, but unfortunately they don't, or at least they don't give me the answers to that. Unfortunately, that is the reality of it. And since he was diagnosed with severe early onset, like you mentioned, about test trials and different medications that, you know, are part of the process now that are out there, he did not qualify for. Unfortunately, we had already missed it, even though we had thought we caught it as early as we could, which is the scary part. But yes, there are so many different drugs and trials and all kinds of new options out there. The reality though is you have to catch it so early, and it's almost sometimes impossible to catch it before you know, you can get the actual proper diagnosis. But definitely that's something to be aware of, and we were aware of it. I guess if we were to do things differently, I guess we would have maybe try to push back more and be more confident about the fact that we thought he could have had Alzheimer's and not given up there. But it's one of those things that until you see a resource like this group, or you have this kind of exposure with someone else's story, you never really think of these questions, and you don't really have that in the back of your mind. So I mean, if I would have had this resource for sure, you know, about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, it definitely would have changed some things. I don't know if that answered your question, so sorry.
Should have. And Diana, did you want to answer?
And, you know, I guess our story was a little different in that, you know, looking back is, and seeing the changes is one thing, but then living it and you know, it's clear looking back, but when you're living it, you're thinking, oh gosh, what's wrong with our relationship? This is not the man that I married. He is, and we are solid, like we're in love, like we've got this, like that was never, there's all these questions about, and then the business isn't going well. And the last thing that was on our mind was Alzheimer's. And then we kind of had the courage to begin to have conversations like a year in, or, you know, it takes time. And then we went to a couple different neurologists, both of which just didn't fit my vibe really. And what I felt our family needed. And then we landed at University of Chicago with Dr. Mastriani, and the memory care center there, and couldn't say enough about our care. And he very quickly was diagnosed. And then we were very fortunate because the model there is that they provide you a care team, right? They don't just give you a pamphlet and you leave. So I did have a care team. And then the question was, where do I join? Where do I go? Do I really want to, it's the journey of being able to, you're in shock, and there's all these emotions, and then finally, okay, let's step into some place and let's go to some support groups, and what can we do to get support for our family. But getting that diagnosis on our journey was a little easier. One of the things I think is important to note is that in 2020, Blue Cross Blue Shield put out an interesting study that showed it's over 200% increase of those who are insured who were diagnosed with dementia, with Alzheimer's and other dementias. And when you think about this influx, because so often we're misdiagnosed as younger families, or undiagnosed or unseen and misunderstood, and they will say, oh, you are depressed, or maybe you have ADD, or let's reconvene. It's all these things, right? Those are the stories of so many of the Lorenzo's House families. But with this influx, you know, it begs you to ask that question of, well, maybe we are on this uptick of being able to, that physicians are now being expected, you know, to ask the question of maybe it is cognitive impairment, that maybe we do need to look at that and not think that it's depression or mental illness, that this is a cognitive issue. So, and that could be also the influx of just the power of brain health that has come on in the past decade, and how we are looking at the brain in a new way, and we're focused on that in ways that we never have been before. So yeah, but I will say overall, there are stories upon stories upon stories at Lorenzo's house where the finding a diagnosis has been brutal.
Thank you. You two are from the Chicagoland area. Jacquelyn is not. Jacquelyn, how did you find resources in your area for testing? That was the question.
Yeah, so it was really hard for me actually because my mom was working at a non-profit and they fired her. And that was when I learned that these jobs don't have to continue in insurance. And so they cut off my mom's insurance. And so in order to get a diagnosis, I had to get Medicaid. However, because the neurological testing is so expensive, they make you go through every other route that this could be before they clear you for it. And so we went to doctor seeing if it was her heart, doctor seeing if it was, mental. But they made us go in circles because they didn't want to pay for the neurological testing. And then once we got it done, it was very much so, here's a piece of paper that says you have it, and then that's it. I wasn't offered support or help. And it was quite scary. And so that's it.
Unfortunately, your story is not unique in the fact that when someone does get younger onset dementia or Alzheimer's, the doctors don't recognize it. And getting the support you need and the help from your insurance, your employer, or whomever is not always there either. It's very depressing. So thank you for that. I don't see any other questions, so I guess it's just gonna be me and my questions. So Diana, I know that you're a little different than these folks that are on here with you and that you have children. How did your children cope? And how did you get them the help they needed to cope and manage through this?
Oh. How did I get my, I don't think I was so great at it. I think upon the initial diagnosis, after I was just myself trying to absorb it and be in my own sense of denial, deep denial, and not trying to understand this diagnosis, right? Trying to understand this new identity for us. My mode was, we're going to beat this. And it truly was that we were going to be the first family on the globe to beat Alzheimer's. And it was just real in my head. I didn't know how else to deal with it because that's how I had solved problems in the past, right? And so we walked with that for a while, and looking back, that's okay, because maybe what we all showed our boys was, let's try to go against the odds, right? And then we got through that part, and then it was really hard to find any kind of therapist or group, and especially a therapist that really matched my own critical approach to how therapy should be, and then also someone who matched just this uniqueness of a young kid walking with a father with dementia. So we didn't really have much support for the boys directly, like no one. It wasn't until Lucas and Justin were 15. So Luke, Papa was diagnosed when he was 11, but things started around when he was 7. It wasn't until he was 15 years old when we had our first youth summit at Lorenzo's house that I can talk about later at some point, but that, and our light clubs at Lorenzo's house, which are these youth groups specifically for youth who have a parent diagnosed with younger onset, specifically that niche of young people. And I remember, and they're virtual, I remember Lucas coming down the hall saying, after that hour together, Mom, I never knew that there were other kids like this. Like suddenly he wasn't alone. And the power of that, just the power of that is enough to make you breathe again. And then he and Justin, I think perhaps, you know, they approached, they're such different people. And so they experienced it differently, responded differently. But I think one of the beautiful gifts that Lorenzo's house has been for them is a place where young people can come together and that they belong there, they can land there, but that also they're a part of the building of it. And that's the power too of Lorenzo's house, is anyone who joins it builds it. We're all building it. It is not me. It is our stories, our collective sorrow, our collective joy, our collective experiences that going to push Lorenzo's house forward to just embrace every young family across this country and globe who are walking this journey. So the youth piece is deep. That's kind of, I guess, just frames a bit of our experience, my experience with our sons.
I think that the thing that everyone on this program today needs to understand is you all need to give yourself a break. You're not inhuman, you are human, right? You're not Superwoman, Superman, though you seem to be to me. You're a force to be reckoned with, to be able to even talk about your experiences, live through the experiences, and offer support to others. Not everybody can share the way you are. A lot of people just internalize it and move through life with it as baggage and not share it. And I don't view this as baggage. I view this as a life experience that you showed love to. And I appreciate you all. Jacquelyn, I know that you're different in that you had a grandma and a mom at the same time experiencing this. How did you find the resources for yourself? Because you were the one that was struggling through this. Did you have any family step in to help you at all? Did you ask for help? And how did you ask for help?
Loaded.
Loaded question.
I was a ball of emotion. Maybe the ways that I requested help weren't the nicest or sweetest, but it was also just me being overwhelmed. And I don't think that any caregiver or care partner should be expected to react in any type of way. We are under an age for tremendous amount of grief and mourning, and I would reach out for help, and sometimes I would, just flat out be told no. I think that some of the experience of caring for a loved one is just realizing that you will learn who the people that will be present are and aren't. And usually it's going to be the people that you don't expect who will show up. And as far as resources, there were support groups, but in 2016, the support groups that I would go to had, people who were about 25 to 30 years older, and they would have conversations like, oh, I have to pull money out of my 401k, or I have to pull equity from my home. And I'm sitting in these supports and I'm like, okay, you guys have more resources than I've even like thought about. And so I would leave them feeling worse off. It just wasn't very easy. And to be honest, I had to figure most of it out. Most of it became me learning how to problem solve because my mom was so young and there wasn't information on people getting this at a younger age.
So you decided to start a little, what did you start? A TikTok of some sort?
So I actually started sharing on YouTube first, and that's when but Snow had found us. I later started sharing on TikTok, and that's really where my support started. My support came from other caregivers who knew that the system was flawed and knew that the supports just weren't there, or that the supports that have started just didn't have the reach yet. And so what helped me was just talking to other people who was living this. And that's where my support started.
Thank you. We did post on the chat for those who want to see that TikTok. It's on the chat. We've added that. So thank you. Quentin. Yes, thank you. Quentin, what are you doing to help others now? Because I know you're a giver and you're an amazing young guy. It's very, very cool what you've done. So what are you doing for others at this point to help them through this process?
Well, I try to take any opportunity that there is, whether it's speaking at a panel such as this, or I know that Gail Nixon connected me with an individual who is also going through something similar, something very different, since everyone's background and story is not anything the same, but there's obviously some sort of overlap where we can all empathize with each other because we get what we're going through. And I've been helping her out just with where to even start. And a lot of that comes with the diagnosis, getting those legal papers, the power of attorney, as well as getting a doctor's note that states that the individual's loved one is incapable of making cognitive decisions on their own, which I realized it helped a lot. It came in handy whenever I had to do stuff on behalf of my father. I needed that along with the power of attorney in order to make some decision making on him. And even with my age, sometimes I had that come up where people push back, and I had problems with trying to get things done for my father. And I can relate with Jacquelyn in regards to the insurance companies and Medicare and just the challenges of it's almost like you have to push and fight hard to get things covered for yourself, even though it's supposed to be you're entitled to. So I understood what that was like, and that's something that I really want to give back and help others, because I see how easy it is to sometimes get caught up with all the different steps and not knowing how to ask for help or how to be bold and ask for help. And so I'm trying to give back and trying to reinstate the same level of confidence in others that you can do it. You have to write down what you need, what you want to accomplish, and you have to be bold about it, and you can't be afraid, you can't be timid. Since this is a scary process, but what's scarier is not being able to do what you want to be able to accomplish. I think
Exactly. Yeah. We have a few questions that came up. And in speaking on that, a doctor's note is the first step, guys. You have to have power of attorney for healthcare, you have to have power of attorney for property, and you must have that doctor's note, especially for early onset. Otherwise, no one listens, and the banks don't. They will deny you everything. I've got stories, but I don't need to share those. Katrina Miller, I'm going to ask you to unmute. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, I was just had so many things running through my head, but the one thing I wanted to make a comment on and a question for is, Jacquelyn, in following you, you were very open with not just the difficult things with dealing with your mom and taking care of her, but the funny things too. And that actually helped me because I'm one of those. I always have to find the funny in things, and my husband and my family, just certain things that happen. I wasn't always open to telling other people so much because I didn't think that they'd want to hear even the funny stuff. But following you, I that opened up so much more, and it actually made it easier for others to feel comfortable. So I thank you for that. And but my question is, another thing that you did that I'm having a hard time with is leaving him. You know, I know that you took the time for yourself and got out and exercised, went to the gym and did walks and things like that. And I just have such a hard time with that for more than maybe an hour. And my husband's good with my family. My sister and my mom are here. He's really good with them, but it's like a guilt thing. So my question was, how did you get past that?
So the guilt never left. The guilt stayed, but a part of it is, I think, because I am an only child, that like, I know that having my me time is important. And so like reinforcing that for my self-help, but towards the final months of my mom's life, we hired someone that my mom loved. My mom absolutely loved. And so knowing that she was in the hands of someone that she liked to spend time with made it not so hard. But I don't know if the guilt leaving your loved one ceases. I just know that in order for me to continue, that I have to feed myself, and feeding myself inadvertently will feed her. And that's just like a reminder that I have to maintain. Something else that helped was like, leaving's hard, but once I was at my destination, that guilt wasn't so harsh anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes you just have to take that step, feel that hurt, and just know that it won't be so strong later on.
Yeah. Yeah, your caregiver, she was wonderful with your mom. I was like, I hope if we get to that point, that I could find someone that good too. You still keep in touch with her? I'm sure you do.
Yes, I do. I talk with Paige often.
Good. My other question was actually, I had two, sorry, was regarding Lorenzo House and what other services you provide. I haven't looked it up or anything yet. My plan was to do so, but just in general, what are some of the other services?
Sure. So it's Katrina, right? I think.
Yes.
Lorenzo, yeah. So the vision of Lorenzo's house is in four. It comes to life in four different ways. Our tagline is "We bring light," and the idea is that we are constantly trying to approach the day by shifting the narrative, this idea of isolation to connection, you know, from like stigma to understanding, from darkness to light, constantly approaching our day as a care partner through that lens. And that mindset in itself can be an amazing guide for us. We have 4 rays, our sort of 4 programming areas. One is our youth initiatives. And our youth initiatives include right now our light club programs. There's a light club weekly for young people ages tweens, teens, and young adults. And then we have a youth summit. We had our 2nd annual youth summit last year. Our first one was in 2021. Our second one was last year. We they've been virtual this year. We hope to do more of an in-person. And we're building out sort of a curriculum that's guided by and using our youth as a compass, so that what we're building today can be for those who come behind us, and until, of course, we find a cure for this. The other ray is our healing spaces, and our healing spaces is virtual and in-person programming, everywhere from a drumming class in Chicago, again, specifically for younger onset families, to online yoga, to online improv, to our Bright Brunch, which is it's one Saturday a month for spouses. It's become more of a women's group. I mean, last week, I think we had, it kind of blew up, but that's on Saturdays. And then we have a light lounge for our men. It's kind of become gender-based. And again, we're really trying to listen to what our community is asking for, and then building those out collaboratively. So it's the youth initiatives, our healing spaces programming, and then we have Care Connections, which Care Connections is designing a peer-to-peer relationship. So connecting someone with sort of a similar profile to someone who maybe has a similar profile, but maybe a little ahead of that person in the journey, so that they have that one-on-one connection and they're not just in a group setting. And we're modeling that after an existing organization in the cancer space, Remain Angels in Chicago. And then our final sort of ray is what we call our Memory Academy. And we have this year really done our due diligence in designing and doing deep research and interviews around what a day program could look like. That is truly a place, you know, our mindset is the Memory Academy. It's a place where we come to learn, not just to have a better quality of life, or not just to feel dignified, we come to learn, we come to grow. And we've done a really exciting job, I think, this year at piecing together what that looks like. And now the question is, what does it look like to implement that in small pieces so that we grow at a really smart pace? So the Memory Academy doesn't exist yet, but that is a part of the future. So those are our 4 rays, to give you a sense. And it's lorenzoshouse.org. And really, like I said, you know, we are now touching almost 200 families and, you know, across the country and globe. And we are building our programming through the voices of our community. That is what we do. And it's so.
Thank you. David Altman has another question. David?
Hi, I was wondering if the people in the group could talk about their decision-making when it came to palliative care versus curative care. So like, for example, you know, I'll give it an example in the support group that I go to. There was this lady whose husband is severe, just a very advanced case. You know, he's in diapers, he can't walk, he can't speak, has trouble eating on his own, all that kind of stuff. And yet she was going on about how it's really important to make sure that he gets his heart meds so that he doesn't have a heart attack or something. And I could not get past that statement personally. So, you know, whether you're trying to just around care, around, you know, if that makes sense. I hope that does.
Are you let me repeat. Are you saying, how are you making the decision for palliative care versus a decision of letting go? Is that your question?
I guess so. Yeah. Like, you know, at what point do you say, okay, fine, let that person have the heart attack and pass away, as opposed to trying to prevent that? Yeah.
Okay, so for those just joining us, it might seem cruel what he just said, but it's not. It's really about the person that you love and what they wanted their life. So you have to know the person you're caring for and what they wanted. So I'm gonna let you, who wants to answer this question of, okay, Quentin?
I was gonna say the first thing that made me think of was when I had to have that really tough, painful, uncomfortable conversation with his doctor for his DNR, and make that decision, not what I want, but off of what I know he would have wanted. And especially for the fact that it runs in my family. And we've been watching this for the last 2-3 decades over and over again. I know that my father would not want to be in a painful state for a long period of time. So I chose the decision whatever would put him at peace sooner and not be drawn out with any sort of deep level of uncomfortableness. But I made that decision for him, not for myself. And I know that that's something that he definitely had expressed, because we had a conversation about that prior to ever getting to that point. And I know that might be a little bit more challenging for people if that's something that was never a conversation that came up. But it is a very uncomfortable thing.
100%. Jacquelyn?
My mom passed very suddenly. And knowing my mom, she went out the way that she would have wanted. 1 week she was up on her feet, dancing and singing, and then the next she was not here. And though it was incredibly sudden and painful for me, had we gone through the full stages of dementia, I know that would have been as equally painful for my mom. And so, in a way, it was her sort of, I guess, choosing.
Thank you. Diana, did you want to answer this question? I know it's hard.
Yeah, I don't know if I have to add. I think I'm more aligned with where Jacquelyn is, that my husband passed recently and he passed suddenly and unexpectedly. So we really weren't, really didn't interface with the, with some of those decisions.
Okay. My suggestion for everyone that's on here and anyone who watches this panel discussion is talk to your family. Talk to your loved ones before a crisis occurs. It doesn't matter what age you are. Anyone over the age of 18 should put their power of attorney in place for healthcare and property. So that should something happen, that's in place. But the problem we also have is people don't talk to each other until they're old, right? My parents, when my dad was 60, I started having a conversation with them. What do you want should? And that should take place earlier, because unfortunately the younger onset dementias are out there and you don't know. Who knows, right? Who knows what's going to happen in your life? So thank you for sharing. I don't see any other questions.
I have a question.
Oh, good. Who is this?
This is Al. Sorry, I'm driving it. Don't have the video on.
Go ahead.
So first off, thank you all for sharing. Really insightful and really powerful. And pardon me if I'm repeating a question that was already asked. I wasn't here for the whole thing. But what I'd like to know, and this is a question for all of you, how do you balance having dignity for your loved ones, autonomy and them being their own person, with the fact that at certain points they're just not capable of making those decisions? Maybe it's not always clear cut. They want X, but you think they should be doing Y, or, you know, you want them to be at a social gathering, but they're not always the most appropriate, things of that nature. How did you go about balancing that?
Who would like to start? Quentin?
Yeah, I can dive in. That brings me back to that uncomfortable time when, so my mom had passed away. I was still finishing school. My dad was still living in his house. I was working on also getting a caretaker to be there so I could go back and finish school at the same time. And also COVID was happening. It was when COVID first hit. So it was just a whole mess in itself, because COVID made things even harder with trying to get a caretaker and get support and bring people to appointments. But sorry, I'm going off on a tangent there. It was tough because my father definitely wanted to keep doing things on his own. And he had, fortunately for me, he had already given up driving. So at least that wasn't an argument of driving or, you know, not being able to drive or wanting to drive. But in the house, I knew we were gonna have to sell the house. So I was working on cleaning stuff in the house. And every time he would see me taking stuff out of the house, he would get upset and he would try to grab the stuff and say, "You're taking my stuff away. What are you doing? You're a monster," you know, things like that, because he would just lose his emotions. He wouldn't know how to manage them. Then afterwards he would apologize and he'd cry, and it would be kind of like a repeatable process of angry, upset, sad, crying, apologizing over and over again. And it came into different scenarios like Thanksgiving, where people invite us because I felt like they feel bad, but they also know it's going to be a hassle. And I'm uncomfortable because it's tough for me to have to be in a setting where my dad has a breakdown, or for example, he couldn't sit at the chair. It was too hard to get him to sit because he just couldn't remember that seat. He's not familiar with their house. And, you know, with people with Alzheimer's, they're familiar with their surroundings that they're used to seeing on a daily basis. So he wouldn't sit, and my cousins don't really know how to manage that stuff. So they were like, "Oh, come on, Ross," which is his name. "Come on, let's sit. And all these people were getting in his face, and then he broke down, and it just wasn't handled well. And I didn't know what to do because I was just so upset. And I'm also was so embarrassed. I feel like it was a mix of emotions where I just wish that we didn't have to be in that scenario or that setting. And I felt so terrible, but I didn't know how to help him. Things like that. I mean, they happen when we were at the store, like at Cose shopping, or the family gatherings. And definitely my dad thought that he was fine, but it wasn't expressing that way. And other people were looking at us and it was making a scene. So that was something I worked on a lot with my therapist, as well as, like Diana had mentioned, her care support team, which came with the University of Chicago. I had the same at Northwestern. And they had a social worker that I spoke to a lot, and that made things a lot easier when trying to ask the doctor questions, and not everything was so medical, black and white. I could at least empathize and emotionally have some sort of conversation about, hey, like, is this normal? You know, as much as normal is with the scenario, is this normal that this might happen? Is there any specific way that maybe I should, you know, have that conversation with my father to try to de-escalate things? So I would say that that's what it kind of reminded me of, that experience. Of not sure if that helped or provide a little context to.
Jacquelyn, would you like to answer the question about dignity and autonomy?
Yeah, so for me, I kind of compare it to, and like not to compare children at all, but like, you know how moms are when they have a child who is having a tantrum and you can't do much. And so with my mom, we just tried to make being in public fun. And so I would play music on my cell phone. We would sing, I stopped feeling like I had to perform in public for other people, because my goal was to make sure my mom was okay. And so the outside world wasn't of my concern with her. But I also started my shirts, which would let people know that I'm caring for someone. And so whatever actions I'm taking, they are for the person that I'm caring for. And so like wearing something that like said caregiver was a cue that helped other people just be a bit more kind and understanding also.
Nice, thank you. I know that you're selling those sweatshirts. I think that we'll have Amber put that up on the chat as well. Diana, do you want to have any final thoughts for us?
Yeah, thanks. Great question, AL, and such a long answer, but I guess three things come to mind. One is like in the home around dignity and autonomy is I really tried to, maybe it was the teacher in me too, because I was in education for forever, is that I really tried to create an environment where it was like a museum, where it was like a classroom, like it was, whether I would take down a picture and get this big, huge mirror so that there could be this interaction when maybe I was working, or that there was, you know, we took our dining room table and swapped it out for a pool table. It's kind of close quarters, but he had his pool table, or that we, you know, would create an environment where maybe we weren't going to go travel the world in our future, but we could have a little bistro in the corner that we can go to Paris this weekend and we can go to Paris tonight. And sometimes we'd put on a disco ball and we always music. And I felt like this was, and then always his books, because I always loved his books and his pens. And it was always, you know, like creating this place that was his and that he could, that he felt safe in, and that where at every turn there was a place that infused a level of dignity was one thing I tried really hard to do. And then giving him some choice in things, right? Giving my man some choice in things was always something I tried to do. And then when it came to getting outside the house, kind of similar to my brother and my sister here, Quentin and Jacquelyn, is that, you know, you begin to care less, and because people are confused by you, right? And by what it might look like in the grocery store, and why I might be pumping the gas and telling him not to get out of the car, or why he's in the back seat when I'm driving and I've got the childcare locks on. Why would I be driving my man? You're like, and later you get to a point just where that doesn't matter. At least I was fortunate to get there, and not always. There were times when it would sting, but I kind of got there. But then there are our sons, right? Then there are our Justin and our Lucas, who didn't always feel safe going outside with them at a restaurant. And no, I don't want to go with Papa. Let's just go alone. Can we, why don't you go with Papa alone? And they were both a little different about it, but so there's that layer of honoring where they are and not wanting to put another, you know, in part, you're like, well, this is who we are, like, own it. But that's not the route I took. Let's just try to find our own, you know, path, and gently trying to walk this, because it's just such a rugged one. So, so those are a couple maybe examples that might shed some light. And I guess the last thing is, you know, we are so fortunate to have now Jacquelyn's sharing their stories and Quentin giving his story in these visuals for people. Like every care partner, caregiver approaches this and is able to peel a little bit of themselves back, you know, show their S on their chest, right? Look at, I'm a superwoman, and this is a little bit of me. And we all do it in different ways that are whatever our gifts are, right? So we have to honor that some people want to share a lot. Some people don't want to share anything, and it's all okay. You know, it's all okay. It's just like kindness is the common thread. If we can just be kind in this, and that's I think just the goal of dignity, right? And love, just showing as much love as you can in whatever way you can, because, you know, they feel that's love is present. Just lean on love. You know, if you lean on love, you win with in so many cases, right? And so many times that's not always the case, and things can get very chaotic, but leaning on love is the best way to dignity.
100%.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
So there are some things I wrote down. Don't let guilt prevent you from living your life. You must accept help. If you do not accept help, you will implode. Self-care is extremely important. I got this from all y'all, just so you know. Music is a really great way to connect with someone whose connections are hard. And there's no wrong way to care. The right way is your way. And be kind. So in closing, everyone be kind to each other and help each other through this process. Thank you all for being on this panel this morning. Quentin Lange, Jacquelyn Revere, and Diana Cose. You guys are amazing. If anyone has questions for them directly, you can get to them through Elderwerks, through Lorenzo's house, momofmymom.com. Quentin is a human, so I'm sure you can always connect with him on Facebook or LinkedIn. You can find him easily. I'm Jennifer Prell. I'm the founder of Elderwerks, and the reason I founded it is because humans matter. So thank you for all mattering, and I wish you all peace, love, and some quiet for yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.